It is Friday, June 16th. Let's talk PlayStation. Hello everyone, welcome back to another waterlogged episode of LTPS. We've got a lot going on from this past week. Of course, it's the not E3 season, so there's been more showcases and reveals and trailers and new gameplay for a lot of upcoming titles for PS4, PS5. We'll be talking about all that, but also all the news stories in between. So first up, as always, our PS Plus reminder. So if you haven't just yet, claim the June PS Plus Essential Games. They're live on PSN, but more importantly, June 20th, we have the lineup that's going live for PS Plus Extra and Premium, which is another solid, strong month for Extra, where we've got 24 games coming to PS Plus Extra. I guess the headline title here would be Far Cry 6, but I would argue for TMNT Shredder's Revenge. That game is so good, but also Inscription. Do not judge the gameplay on that. It is a really interesting, unique game that is totally worth at least trying. That one got a lot of attention and awards back when it came out, and for good reason. But there's a lot of other stuff in here, a lot of varied genres. So again, it's a really sizable month with a little something there for everyone. Also cannot deny My Friend Peppa Pig, not only for children, but also if you're just into animated pig adventures. It's a pretty dope game to get on PlayStation Plus. But going into Premium, not surprising, we've only got 3 titles, but Killzone Liberation on PSP, Worms PS1, and Herc's Adventures on PS1 as well. So again, we talked about that where it had the store listing on the PSN backend. It's always cool to get those titles on, make them more accessible because the physical for that game is quite expensive. But also cool to see Killzone back on there as well. So, or Liberation in particular, that's a kind of a more of a standout outlier title in the Killzone franchise. But this goes nicely into our first news story, which is about PlayStation Plus Premium getting PS5 game streaming sometime soon. So the rumors, well, it's not really surprising per se, but yeah, this is finally, it had a soft formal announcement. So this was announced over on the PlayStation blog. They basically just confirmed that they're testing PS5 game streaming functionality across the game catalog, game trials, and also digital PS5 games that you own outright. They say this is for supported PS5 digital games, so it might not be for all of them, but as of right now, streaming is only for PS5 consoles, and that they're in the early stages, so there's going to be more details that they'll share later, including the launch time frame. So it's not live, but that's what we know about PS5 server blades and PS5 game streaming so far. I will be very interested in trying that out to see what is different or how improved it is. But this also goes into a conversation that Nick McGuire from Sony had with GamesIndustry.biz. Nick McGuire is the vice president and global head of subscriptions at PlayStation, and he revealed some info about the relaunch and its first year performance, right? That's what we were discussing on our Tuesday video, was reviewing the PS Plus relaunch in the first 11 months, so I did record that right before the June lineup was revealed, but we did talk about that recently. Anyway, Nick says that people are spending 7 times more time on PS Plus than they did with PS Now. Stray brought in the highest number of players that have accessed it over the first 12 months, and Ghost of Tsushima brought in the highest number of hours played. Not too surprising for that one. You can easily drop 60, 70 hours, well-known first-party title, and that goes into the revelation that the top 10 games are, 4 of them are PlayStation Studio titles. So, between something like Ratchet, Horizon, Miles Morales, 4 of the top 10 are PlayStation Studio titles. And PS5 is the bigger platform for the new Plus service, despite the smaller install base compared to PS4. Now, as for the first-party game strategy, McGuire says, and I quote here, "We're happy with our strategy. Putting games in a bit later in the life cycle has meant that we can reach more customers 12, 18, 24 months after they have released. We're seeing customers still get excited about those games and jumping in. For us, that's working. Occasionally, there will be an opportunity to invest in a day and date like Stray, and we will jump on those when they come in, but for us, letting the first-party games go out to the platform outside of the service first, that's working, and that will continue to be our strategy moving forward." So, interesting insight there from Nick on the first-year performance for PS Plus. Some things we did not know, but some things we did, like the first-party strategy. I mean, we had Jim Ryan already say that a year ago when PS Plus had the formal relaunch. Even before then, it was always a matter of not expecting Sony to do that. It's not like Microsoft's strategy where they can financially support that. Sony and most other big publishers are still going to do the premium, standard digital and retail release, then over time sort of revitalize sales from from, either running a sale on the game or doing an updated release with more content, or also partnering with platform holders to release it via subscription, and Sony is really no different in this regard. But hey, it was cool to see Stray bring in the most players over that 12 months, but that was our Tuesday video, was looking at the first 11 months of how the new relaunch has performed, especially relating to the amount of titles and the quality of those titles. So if you haven't seen that conversation just yet, that was our Tuesday upload. Next up, we have some Last of Us news stories. So recently, the 10-year anniversary finally came and went for the first Last of Us on PlayStation 3, the first release of that game. So it's been 10 years now. And with that, there was no major news associated with it. Well, not on the day of, although we did see a new patch released for the PC version, so they've been slowly improving that. It does seem to be in a much better place than it was at launch. Still some work to do, but they also got Steam Deck verification again. But Neil Druckmann did say that there's more The Last of Us news coming your way, and after saying that, we got confirmation about a Universal Studios The Last of Us horror night experience, with select nights running from September to October. This kind of goes into the business segment briefing where, one angle that Sony is looking to explore for their IP is real life experiences that they can leverage the IP on. So there's like an Uncharted theme park in Spain too that's coming out soon or something, or they're building it, or whatever the case may be. We're not going to really cover this news often, but yeah, that's what's going on in the Last of Us universe. Nothing insane, but, a few happenings and whatnot. Now, let's get into some PlayStation VR 2 announcements, because one strange omission from the PlayStation Showcase, or at least to me, was we did not see Firewall Ultra, but they recently showed up during the Future Games Summer Showcase to not really say anything. So they didn't show a new trailer, no new footage, no release date, basically just reminding people that, hey, Firewall Ultra, PSVR 2 exclusive, it's coming at some point. Having said that, we also saw some recent announcements for various other PSVR 2 games, which this does happen quite often, so we'll periodically check in on PSVR 2. So just yesterday, Sony announced a bunch of games. Tiger Blade, this one is a kind of like a sword and shield, well, not shield, sword and gunplay style game with a lot of replayability. Then there's Wanderer Fragments of Fate. This focuses on exploration and puzzle solving. Then there's Pixel Ripped 1995. This is a running series of games, so this one is about reliving gaming in the 90s. Looks so cool. That's also on PSVR as well, or it's coming to PSVR. Then the Seventh Guest VR, so that's a new VR modern rendition of the 1993 horror puzzle game. That was really weird to see, but because that kind of came out of nowhere. But Sony also put out this handy infographic showing more games coming soon. So June has Budget Cuts Ultimate, Pixel Ripped 1978, which that one just launched, and also C-Smash VRS. July has Synapse, which is a roguelite, and then there's also Operation Wolf Returns and VR Skater. So a lot of VR stuff coming out. I know some have been asking for a PSVR 2 proper review. I'm kind of going for, at this point, more of a long-term thing, right? So the day one is already come and gone, but, kind of a few months later, we'll talk about, how the headset's been doing and things like that. I don't know when I'll eventually get around to that, but I'm always checking in with the headset periodically and playing all these new games as they come out. Now let's move on to our Final Fantasy 16 news, because sure enough, during that Los Angeles live stream, that is where they confirmed and released the demo on PSN, so it's out there, you can try it. It's the first opening act and prologue, so you can play that and then transfer the file over to the full game when it comes out next week. I have not had the chance to play it myself just yet. That's killing me. I want to try and jump in by maybe tomorrow or Sunday night. Just been very busy, but the full game's coming out soon enough as is. Although I am seeing a lot of positive impressions so far. That's very good, especially for Square, where, usually with these demos, they can be detrimental to the game's long-term success. I mean, that's what they're there for, is to tip you off on if you're going to like the game or not. But we had two kind of interesting things pop up during this presentation. So one of them was Jim Ryan making a very brief announcement, not even much of an announcement, but he just showed up to say that, Sony and their relationship with Square goes back to the birth of PlayStation and that their relationship has never been stronger. Now, I'm seeing some, obviously, like speculation is running wild on, what does that mean? Is there a possible Square acquisition coming in? We can't sort of grasp on every little thing that happens. So, I mean, obviously they have a partnership going on right now, and they do have a long-term relationship that they've fostered throughout many console cycles. So nothing we can really say beyond, hey, he made an appearance and he said something that we can already see happening. But there was that. There was also, we learned that Platinum Games and also Square's creative business unit, that's the Kingdom Hearts team, they worked on parts of this game as well. So it'll be interesting to find out, or at least try and see their influence when the full game does come out. And, between that and also the DMC producer and director working on this game, right? There's a lot of influence across the board on why this game it is a very different Final Fantasy from what we're used to. Now, finally, we can also say that copies are already leaking out there, right? So spoilers are, probably going to be hitting the internet fairly soon. So if you want to, be cautious of that, I would recommend just watching your Twitter timeline and all that stuff. You can try and, what I recommend is the Google Chrome extension, spoiler protection, which you can enter in keywords and it'll try and block out a bunch of text and pictures for related things. So just be on the lookout if you're looking to avoid the spoilers for this game. It's coming out soon enough anyway. Now, moving on to another rumor for the Final Fantasy franchise, and despite the magnitude of this one, of course, take it with a tiny, ever so minuscule piece of salt. But this one is again coming from the Reset Era user I'm a Hero 2, where at this point they've actually deleted their account from the website. So perhaps they were flying a little bit too close to the sun with how they may or may not know about these projects. But they started teasing a Final Fantasy X remake by asking if anyone likes the game and reminding everyone about the 25th anniversary, for which that would be 2026. So, kind of lining up a roadmap here of all the projects Square has, where the FF9 remake, despite the more modest scope of that one, it's not a full-blown FF7 style remake, but that is apparently slated for, I believe they said summer 2024. But yeah, so it's obviously a rumor, and they wanted to hop off the website. They initially were the ones that put out the info for the Persona 3 remake and also Persona 5 Tactica. So, take it for what it is. I would just say FF10, that's one of my personal favorites. So this was initially kind of like a, oh dear, are they actually going to kind of things. So we'll keep our eyes peeled and see what happens as this story develops, but that's another rumor. All right, let's move on to all the third-party announcements for the not E3 week. We had the Capcom Showcase, Ubisoft Forward event, and also the Xbox Game Showcase. So between all of those, we had a lot of third-party games announced for PS4, PS5. So to get you brought up to speed on all that stuff, in case you missed it, here's everything you need to know. So starting with Capcom, they opened with what I thought was going to maybe make an appearance during the PlayStation Showcase, assuming it was a good announcement, but not so good here, where Capcom gave an update on Pragmata. That game is delayed indefinitely, so not 2022, 3, or 4 for that matter, just delayed indefinitely, but at least they did provide a small update. Then we got a demo released for Ghost Trick Phantom Detective, so you can go try that out. Then Apollo Justice Ace Attorney Trilogy confirmed for PS4 next year. Kunutsugami Path of Goddess confirmed for PS5, that's good to see. Exoprimal trailer, a really, really, really long trailer for Exoprimal, so that's what took up a good portion of this event. And then they closed with Dragon's Dogma 2, so we got some info there. I guess the most noteworthy thing is that the game is 4 times larger than the first entry. Now, going into the Ubisoft Forward 2023 event, they opened with gameplay for Star Wars Outlaws. We saw the reveal for that game during the Xbox Showcase, but the gameplay was at Ubisoft's event. Then we saw Avatar Frontiers of Pandora gameplay, so nice to have an update there. Then a gameplay demo for Assassin's Creed Mirage as well, so if you're into Assassin's Creed, there you go. A gameplay overview for the new Prince of Persia: The Lost Crown. Then we move on to the Crew Motorfest, announced for PS4, PS5, coming this September. And then we got a sea shanty for Skull and Bones, very appropriate, but they're announcing a closed beta for this August, on PC only, I believe. Now, moving on to the Xbox Games Showcase, so a few third-party things here going on, and first-party stuff actually too. So Payday 3 announced, confirmed, coming to PS5. Like a Dragon Infinite Wealth was also revealed, so shout out to the Yakuza fans out there, got a new mainline coming in hot. Fallout 76 Atlantic City, and also a new trailer for the Elder Scrolls Online Necrom. So we've seen with ongoing service-based games that new content should presumably come to PlayStation as well. Don't Nod's next game, Jusant, was announced. Love the art style to this game, so I'll be keeping my eyes on that. And then Still Wakes the Deep revealed a new horror game from the Chinese Room. Now, I'm not much of a horror game fan, but man, this trailer is setting a tone and a vibe that I can really get down with here. Anyway, after that, we got Cyberpunk 2077, Phantom Liberty, a new trailer coming this September, and also a new trailer for Cities Skylines 2. You know I'm super into that and looking forward to that one big time. That is I love city builders, so definitely looking forward to that. But now we get into the announcements which are a point of contention, and that is Persona 3 Reload, Persona 5 Tactica, and also the new Atlas IP, Metaphor ReFantasia. So these games were not confirmed for PS4 or PS5 right away, and we did say before to expect that because that's what Microsoft did for the announcements and the console ports of Persona 4 Golden and Persona 3 FES. So they did do it again this time around, and it's like we said before, you know, it's totally normal for all the platform holders to hold a presentation or a live stream, and they'll host plenty of third-party announcements. And of course, during their own showcase, they're not going to explicitly mention other platforms. But, you know, normally with Sony, Nintendo, and historically Microsoft, what happens is sometimes even while the live stream is still going, as long as a trailer makes its appearance on that live stream and then comes and goes, you'll see press packages released immediately. So you can check the publisher's website, their Twitter account, YouTube, whatever else, their Twitter bio. They'll change everything and confirm all platforms immediately, sometimes while the live stream is still running. That's how this has always been, because they usually want to get ahead of this stuff anyway, because they know people are going to ask inevitably what platforms is that game coming to. But this is a uniquely recent new Microsoft thing, which is placing an embargo on confirming other platforms. So, you know, it's a little bit strange, but the rationale or the thought process here, this would make the most sense to me, but it was what Sammy Barker of Push Square had heard recently. So allegedly, the reason why Microsoft is doing this is because usually when they do third-party announcements, they don't see much benefit because Sony has such a large social media presence that, you know, even though they'll host the announcement, it's the Sony trailer that gets more views. It's the Sony tweets that gets more likes and engagement. So the thought process here is that Microsoft wants a bit of their social media numbers to, you know, have that initial uplift before the PlayStation versions get confirmed. It does make sense, and so perhaps that is why they're doing this. And it's certainly a very strategic play for what is a historically PlayStation-centric franchise, especially given that, you know, during the PlayStation Showcase, Microsoft had already prepared a little infographic which immediately confirmed all the third-party announcements for Xbox after the PlayStation Showcase. Right now, one, I thought that was funny, and two, very handy for a Xbox customer, right? I mean, it's totally fair game, fair play. That's how this stuff has always happened. But it is funny to see them do that while also placing an embargo that prevents, you know, a very PlayStation historic franchise from being able to be confirmed, right? Not to stir the pot, but it is funny to see how they're, you know, going about this. So it's just something worth pointing out that it certainly is a very unusual and new Microsoft-only thing, where Sony and Nintendo have not in recent years, or as far as I can remember, done something specifically like that. Not quite a marketing rights thing or timed exclusivity, but a very particular embargo that is trying to serve just a different purpose. Moving on to our next story, it's not good news for physical game ownership if the Twitter account at Kamurocho Bros is to be believed. They cover RGG Studio and the one title, Like a Dragon, The Man Who Erased His Name. They say they've spoken with retailers who have learned from Sega that there is going to be no ESRB physical version of the game and that it will be digital only. Now, we just talked about this for Alan Wake 2, where that's a AAA single-player game. You almost always expect that, for the time being, those games are going to get disc releases. And that doesn't rule out other regions where English could be on the disc, or, a limited print company could step in, like Fangamer or Limited Run or I Am 8-Bit. I mean, that is the business model. It doesn't rule out disc prints at some point. But in the here and now, we are seeing that perhaps more publishers are, maybe getting comfortable with the idea of on day one and for the foreseeable future, just release the game digital only. There is upside to it, obviously. And even though I love physical games, I acknowledge that those upsides in the long term are probably the most ideal for, well, not only them, which is kind of a business thing, but environmentally speaking, the energy efficiency of downloading games is going to be a lot more green versus printing, shipping, manufacturing physical games. But not to get on a long-winded topic on the whole thing, just that, with Alan Wake 2, I said, hey, this might be the start, not going to be an overnight thing, but we might see more publishers do this, and perhaps this is going to be our second example, so we'll see, but for now, that's what we're hearing. Next up, we have some comments on the state of the games industry from the Xbox Game Studios chief Matt Booty when speaking with Axios about longer development times for AAA games. He was quoted saying, "I think that the industry and fans were a little behind the curve on a sort of reset to understand that games aren't 2 or 3 years anymore. They're 4 and 5 and 6 years." Now, he does state the obvious of smaller studios or indie studios. If the project scope is more modest, they're going to be able to turn something out a lot faster, but generally it's more a comment on what most big publishers are facing nowadays, which is this sort of arms race on, putting out the next great thing, which I know this is the Xbox chief, but it's not a comment on, or it's not a uniquely Xbox problem speaking on their portfolio management and this and that. I mean, there's obviously a conversation to be had there separately, but it's, you can even look back at acquisitions from 2018 for them, and that's still not quite enough time for some of these large-scale projects. I know there's different studio problems and this and that, but, generally you can still see how acquisitions that far back are still not bearing fruit just yet, although they did have a good showcase recently. Besides the point, getting to the Sony aspect of this, right? I mean, we just saw this with Ragnarok where, it was understood that Ragnarok was, at a certain point internally, they were discussing doing 3 games, that this was going to be a trilogy, and, the story was going to be stretched out over another entry, but Cory Barlog and a few others at this point settled on doing Ragnarok all in one game because the general... the thought process there was, do we really want to spend 10 plus years trying to tell and get this story out the door? 10 years is a significant amount of time. And despite Ragnarok's, for many, the story pacing being, feeling a bit rushed near the end, it certainly does feel like that. But it is a net positive, I would say, when the reason for that is, hey, let's get this game done. It is going to be a fantastic title that people will really enjoy, but we'll be able to move on to something else, right? So, nowadays you do have to be an extremely large publisher funding all these studios with, multi-studio teams to crank out the kind of thing that we saw 2 cycles ago, which was, Naughty Dog putting out Uncharted 1, 2, 3, and The Last of Us all in one platform cycle. We are just not really going to see that happen ever again. Not for some of these high caliber studios that even do have multiple teams running, but, depending on what they're trying to accomplish, we're just likely not going to see that again, which, for better or worse, that is what we have nowadays. And that's a good segue to our next story, which is Ralph Grassetti, the former art director at Sony Santa Monica. He had actually just left after 10 years to go to Netflix working on an original IP. Good luck to you, Ralph. But this is something where he was recently speaking with Flow Games on YouTube, and he provided a lot of interesting insight into the development process at such a large, high-caliber studio like Santa Monica. So shout out to Trans Station on Reset Era for providing the context here, since they are speaking Portuguese, and we all know how translation, the context can get lost there. But anyway, Roth talked about how Sony's internal review teams are the ones that evaluate a game through the development process to determine what works, what doesn't, is it fun. They're basically there to be, this offshoot third party that is not touching the game until they need to, because when you are working on something, it's hard to separate yourself from the work and not even understand, like, okay, is what I'm doing and what I'm making fun? So, Sony has teams like that in place that are always monitoring the process that throughout development to see if the game is if what they're doing is working. He also talks about how the bonuses work for Sony, where they have two, one for sales milestones and then another for shipping the game. Now he does say that they're flexible on studios needing more time, so it's not like Sony would have a problem with a delay, but it's usually the studio's own internal goals and targets that motivates everyone, which does lead to everyone working overtime or crunching towards the end, which they choose to do. But he does believe that prestige studios like Santa Monica and Naughty Dog, for them, they aim for 90 Metacritic scores. It's not a mandate from Sony like some places may have reported this, but it's a goal that the studios are aiming for. Which, it's not like other studios don't want to put out a good game. That much is obvious. They do want to put out the best thing they possibly can. But for these larger, upper echelon of studios like a Santa Monica or a Naughty Dog, there is a certain work ethic and culture and more so pride of you having a personal hand in that project, and also for your resume, obviously, but you want to be able to be a part of something truly special. And it's good to hear for what can be a very intense, stressful environment that Sony, and this is from many anecdotes at this point, we hear this quite often, is that while Sony can certainly step in, oversee projects, and maybe cancel things or move things around when they have to or need to, right? Those are never easy decisions, but, when something is progressing to a acceptable level, they can give that studio the time that they need and have, bonuses in place for properly awarding that staff. Moving on to our latest update for the Microsoft acquisition of Activision Blizzard. We've had a few things pop up here, so let's fire off some stories. The FTC has filed a preliminary injunction and a temporary restraining order against Microsoft to halt any further actions regarding the Activision Blizzard buyout. Microsoft's Brad Smith actually welcomes this, since it will accelerate the process where they can now fight the transaction in federal court, so that's what they actually wanted that to happen. The hearings for that are there's going to be a pre-evidentiary one on the 21st, then the primary ones are on the 22nd, 3rd, 27th, 8th, and 9th. And then for the Competition and Appeals Tribunal in the UK, they already had a few hearings, but the main one is scheduled for July 28th, estimated to last 5 days. So that's what we've got going on there. But remember, we're getting to that point where, the deadline is fast approaching for this to close, which obviously there's a lot of hurdles in place. So something is going to happen within the next few weeks that could be Microsoft, surprisingly somehow closing, or, an extension to the deal, a renegotiation with Activision, a breakup, the whole breakup thing could happen, but, that seems not likely considering how motivated Microsoft is. They're trying to speed up the process as fast as possible, and there is speculation growing that perhaps there is a path here that will see them close this. So we should be seeing more things happening fairly soon. Now, with all that said, it is time for Let's Talk Plus, the weekly Let's Talk PlayStation giveaway, where one of you can win a $10 PSN code. I would like to congratulate this viewer right here. I'll be contacting you very soon via email or Twitter, and if you would like to win a $10 PSN code, it's very easy. You can follow the link down below. Supporting this channel, a number of ways can gain you an entry, and I'll announce the winner next week because I'm trying to help pay for your games. those are some of the news stories from this past week, and our Tuesday video was looking at the PS Plus relaunch first year, well, nearly first year, right? So all the games that Sony offered, the quality of those games, also premium, how's that doing, how many classics, so you can go check that out. But as per usual, another video on Tuesday, hopefully on time, but that is pretty much it. So that concludes this week's episode of Let's Talk PlayStation. I'm Ryan Benecki. Thank you all so much for talking with me, and I will see you all next Friday.